While I'm out here loading some 9mm cartridges, actually I'm just priming cases at the moment because I don't prime them on the Progressive. I like to hand prime them. I thought I would chat with you about the importance of the recent victories that we've gotten with the bump stock and the pistol brace in particular. And there was the other one, I forgot what it was also a federal court case. And all three of them had nothing to do with the Second Amendment so much as they had to do with the ATF overstepping its authority as a regulatory agency. And so the cases were decided based upon that, not based upon Second Amendment issues. That doesn't mean they don't affect the Second Amendment, because they most certainly do, but the cases themselves did not revolve around a Second Amendment question. The question was, did ATF overstep its authority when it passed these rules? And the obvious answer is yes, it did, and that's why the court decided the way it did. So why is that important to you and me if, like me, you happen to live in a state where you can't have a pistol brace anyway, or a bump stock, or an AK pistol or an AR pistol because your state has made it illegal? Well, I'm going to answer that question for you. But before I do, let me just suggest that you hold on to the aggravation you may feel about the fact that that this means nothing to you. I hear this all the time. This decision isn't a victory because it doesn't affect me because I'm in a restrictive state. Okay, I get it. And let's also try to just, at the moment, let's just set aside, well, he didn't use a bump stock when he was shooting out of the Mandalay Bay Hotel in Las Vegas. Okay, so can we just put that stuff aside for just a minute and leave it out of the comments? And let's just look at why the cases are important, okay? I get it. I'm in a restrictive state. I understand. Now, as far as whether the shooter at the Mandalay Bay shooting out of the Mandalay Bay Hotel into that concert or whatever used a bump stock or not, I have no idea. I wasn't there. And so that's just a, social media conspiracy theory debate I ain't got the time for or the desire to get involved in. So I'm not going to deal with either of those. What I'm going to deal with is why the cases themselves are important to us as American citizens and Second Amendment supporters. Okay, so that's where we're going with this. And I'm going to urge you now, stay with me. Okay, stay out of the comments with all the nonsense. Whether you think it's nonsense or not, I don't care. It's nonsense here. Stay out of the comments with the garbage. And let's pay attention, please, okay? Because I get a lot of hate mail whenever I start talking about this kind of stuff, and I'm not interested in any today. All right? Okay, so the reason why the cases are important is not because of the bump stock or the pistol brace. Yes, those are important. But these things are important because it is the Supreme Court and the federal court system reigning in the administrative state. The way our government works has nothing to do with an administrative state, and I would be willing to bet you that if we were to resurrect the founders of this country, they would tell us on no uncertain terms that they never intended to have a fourth branch of government called an administrative government that was unelected and was able to make rules and regulations that controlled the people and that affected the people's lives. That was not the way our government was designed, and it should not be happening now. We have three branches of government according to our Constitution. We have the executive branch on a federal level. That's the president and the various different people who work in the executive branch. Vice president, the people working in the White House, and that kind of stuff. Their authority was supposed to be incredibly limited, and their only responsibility, when you get right down to it, was to keep the country safe and defend the nation for the most part. Then you have the Congress. That's the legislative branch. Those are the folks who make laws. Now, you have the House of Representatives, which is designed to be a very contentious and argumentative group of people. There's 435 of them from 435 different districts around the country. They're going to argue about stuff, and that's by design. And then you have the Senate, which is supposed to be more of a deliberative body, and there's only 100 of those. They don't argue and spit on each other as much, and that's by design. You have to get a law past both of those in order to get it to the president's desk, in order to get it signed. That ain't easy to do because they argue and spit and carry on in committees and everything else in the House, and it's hard to get a bill even through the House. And then if you get it through the House, it's got to then get through the Senate, but the Senate will make changes to it, which means then it's got to go back to the House in some sort of conference to see if they can agree upon the changes, which they often will not do, in which case the bill dies. If they do manage to get it back to the House to make change, the House will make additional changes the Senate doesn't agree to, and then it will go back and forth like a ping pong ball, and oftentimes the bill dies. The overwhelming majority of bills that are proposed in the House or the Senate never become law, and that is by design. It's supposed to be very hard to pass laws in the Congress. Once they get past the Congress, they go to the president. And guess what? You can get all that work done, get that bill to the president, and that joker can still veto it, and it will never become law. That's the way our government's supposed to work. Now, if a bill does become law, and the people look at that and go, wait a minute, that's not right, they can go to the third branch of government, which is the judicial branch, and they can sue. And if it gets far enough in there, and if it's not right, the judge, federal judge, or state judge, because our state governments are very similar, they're just smaller, but very similar kind of arrangement. The federal judge will then look at that, and if it's determined to be outside the authority of the federal government, or it's determined to be outside the bounds of the Constitution, the judge will throw it out. That's what we're seeing happen. That's the judicial branch. Now, you say the judicial branch doesn't have any safeguards. Yes, it does. In order to have a judge sit on the judicial branch federally, the federal executive branch, the president, has to appoint that person. And then the Senate has to approve that person. And the president can appoint them like crazy, but until the Senate approves them, they don't get the job. So you can see how they have to get past various different things. At any given time, if a judge goes completely off the rails, they can be impeached by the Congress and thrown out of office. It isn't easy, but it can be done. None of this is supposed to be fast or easy or simple, and that is by design. So what has the executive branch done, and what has the Congress done? They've created the administrative state, the EPA, the Department of Education, the ATF, and so on, so that they can get around this process and make rules to hold you and I by and make us follow. And that's where ATF decision-making comes from. So, President Trump, I'm going to pick on President Trump here. Yes, I do kind of like President Trump, honestly, but he doesn't do everything I like, for sure. But he got out there and pushed the ATF to pass a rule to ban the bump stock. Now, he did not do it with pistol braces. I think that was his predecessor. I don't remember. But in any case, the whole bump stock thing was simply ATF saying, yes, sir, we'll do it, to the president and figuring out a way to adjust the rule to ban the bump stock and consider it a machine gun. ATF doesn't have the authority to do that because it's an administrative agency and they cannot make laws. And they should not make laws, but they do it all the time, as do all these other agencies that go well outside the bounds of their authority to create rules that have the effect of law and regulations that have the effect of law, which you and I and companies and other Americans have to follow, or else. That is the practical effect of these decisions. It's to rein in the administrative state, and the Supreme Court is doing that in a host of different areas, not just with regard to firearms. They are trying to rein in the administrative state so they can restore the three branch of government balance to our country. That is extremely important. So that's why these decisions are important to follow and important to read and important to know what they are. Okay? It's not necessarily, even if it's a gun case, it is not limited to firearms. It affects the administrative state as a whole. And if you look at the various decisions the Supreme Court has come out with that are outside of gun cases, you'll find they're working very hard to squash that administrative state and get that thing back in the corral where it belongs. So I hope this helps. Have a great day. Thank you for all of your support.